Hello and welcome. My name is Marc Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Presentence Report Service. Welcome, and I thank you for listening in. Today's YouTube is going to be about you and your attorney and the importance of you as the client or defendant participating with your attorney as you prepare for your pre-sentence interview. It's important, and it's probably one of the most important time periods in your life. Before we get into that, though, I'm going to jump backwards in time to when, and this is for those of you who may be listening who are at that period of time where there are those around you that maybe have told you that they heard that maybe the FBI is asking questions, or you've gotten a target letter. Let me open the screen for a second. See if I can do this correctly. Wait, I think I did that already. And then we're going to... Okay, so in addition to taking an active role in your defense, which I just said, my questions are going to be, did the FBI wake you up with their famous early 6 a.m. knock? Were you the target, or are you the target of a government investigation, white-collar professional facing a fraud indictment? Maybe you're an elected official in charge of a corruption. You had a successful corporate business or a general business. You've been part of a corporation, part of the, I think, the Department of Justice has this, they're on a current streak where they are looking for corporate malfeasance, where essentially they're having corporations with the intent of they want them to self-police and identify those individuals, where if they identify them to the Department of Justice before the Department of Justice shows up at their front door, they will not get in as much trouble. But then it puts you out on a limb should you be doing something that you shouldn't be doing. If you're in business where you're, business for yourself that took you years to build, are you facing federal charges? Attorneys should be your first direction to turn to, but they should be federal attorneys who practice federal criminal defense with experience in federal court. And now we get down to the nitty-gritty, where the nuances of navigating federal prison, though, is not part of your traditional legal defense. This requires a unique set and knowledge and skills that are going to be of interest to judge, and it includes, in part, your narrative and release plan. And there are going to be other stakeholders. Stakeholders are individuals that are responsible for your future. What are these others? Some of these stakeholders you will never meet, and some you will meet in the future. To list a few, the Bureau of Prisons in Grand Prairie, Texas, their administrative staff are those that are going to review your pre-sentence report and then place you into a specific prison. You'll never get to speak to them. Others are going to be your case managers and unit team when you get into prison, and they will have enormous discretion over your entire life, over where you sleep, jobs you get, the ability for you to take programs for First Step Act, and how quickly you get released either to home confinement or to halfway house. Therefore, in addition to your legal defense, it's equally important for you to prepare at your sentencing hearing, because your judge wants to hear from you. Your judge doesn't want to hear from anyone else. Your judge already knows that the Department of Justice wants you to go to prison. They know that the prosecutor wants a conviction to notch in their file, so that they can, at some point, they can leave the office and go into private practice. They know that your attorney is paid to say nice things, but they know nothing about you other than what they've read regarding the narrative that the Department of Justice has released to the press months to years ago, and that is in the form of your indictment. So yes, if this is something that you're willing to participate in, I can help you because I've been where you are now. Approximately 20 years ago, I too received a felony conviction, and I am grateful that with the support of colleagues and medical school dean, that I was able to get my medical license reinstated in full back in 2010. And after spending time seeing patients, I transitioned over to working with others like yourselves who are now considered justice impacted individuals. Because frankly, when this happened to me, I was unprepared for everything. I knew nothing about what a narrative was. I knew nothing about what a reentry plan was, what an allocution was. When the judge asked me at the sentencing hearing if I had nothing to say, I didn't know what to say. I was unprepared when I entered the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I didn't know a thing. And so my goal is for you to be prepared, because knowledge, as we all know, is key in life. And so now that we're through this part, let's go into where I want to be. Let's see. No, that's not it. Let's see here. And there. Okay. So the pre-sentence report. As you prepare for your pre-sentence interview, this is where we want to be right now, because the pre-sentence report is going to follow you for a very long time. And from your pre-sentence interview, the court's representative is going to sit down with you and draft the pre-sentence report. The probation officer is going to take the information from you, and from that, there'll be a release date calculated. Through the report, you're going to supply that you will supply to the probation officer. You will hopefully have drafted your personal narrative, which in that you will accepted responsibility for the crime that was committed and acknowledge the pain that you've inflicted upon the victims. In addition to that, there will be information that will allow your attorney to be able to define the security level. You will have provided information should you have a lengthy medical and mental health care file, if you will. If you do, you should have all that information put together, which we'll go through. If you have mental health or psychology issues, there are limited availability. For example, if you're autistic or have a borderline personality disorder, there are only 2 prisons in the country nationwide. If you have or are leaning with a tendency towards dementia, there is 1 prison with 35 beds nationwide. Lastly, the Federal Bureau of Prisons nationwide has, in 2018, as we have all read, the president has signed and Congress has instituted the First Step Back programming, addressing criminogenic needs and risk through a risk assessment program, a risk assessment system. So what does this mean? The First Step Back program allows all of you, before I was there, so I'm not included, that these are programs that when you take them, you are allowed to get credits, and these credits can be accumulated up to 1 year off your sentence, and then you can continue to gather credits depending if you are deemed a minimum or low risk towards extra time in a halfway house or home confinement. If you are a medium or high risk, these credits can be used towards other alternative benefits within the system, as well as you can work your way down towards a low or minimum risk. But you will need to demonstrate in all cases the ability to show incremental improvements as you reduce your criminogenic need. And this is stuff that these are things that you need to work at, which we were going to go through. First, you're going to have to do is you're going to need to take a risk assessment survey. And we will go through that in a short time. So what can you do to shorten your stay from the outset? Well, it's going to start with writing a personal narrative. And the personal narrative is going to be, it's going to take time to write. And this could take every inch of several months. And so the personal narrative is something where you express your remorse for the victim's pain and suffering. You accept responsibility for what you did, and you understand the seriousness of the crime without minimizing it. You want to go through your life history from childhood, family interactions to what brought you to this point. This is literally, it's a very detailed history of your family history through till this point in your life. If there was a trigger event, what was the trigger event? It's a long story. I mean, if it involved stealing and was to put food on your family's plate because your kid and your families were starving. I mean, this all has to go into it. If it was a drug crime and you were brought up in a family where, there were drug use all the time and maybe both your parents were in prison, all of this needs to be put into your personal narrative. If you were from a family of privilege and whatever was the reason it brought you into this, caused you to do this particular crime, all of this needs to go into this particular personal narrative. But it needs to be a true and honest version of yourself that's written over time, that in the end, when it's distilled, is a clear version of yourself that is an opposite of what the Department of Justice has written in their indictment. You're not making excuses for what has been done, but you've accepted responsibility and you realize that you have to pay a penalty. Next is going to be a release plan, because your judge at sentencing is going to want to know your plan to not your release, reentry plan, but he wants to know that your judge does not want to see you back in your courtroom. And so, this is the very beginning. So you don't know really what you're going to do when you get out of prison, but maybe you had an employer or have a friend who has a business and they're willing to write that they're going to hire you because you have an exceptional skill and you're of exceptional character. That's a Class A letter. You want to get it. But you can also write that since your arrest, you've had time to think about what you've done and you didn't recognize how bad your decisions were. But it's not about you. It's about your victims and what you have done and now what you need to do to make things right. And that can be just your beginning. If you have a drug abuse problem, you need to say you do. But if you don't write that, because that's not good. If you have a support structure, put that into your release plan. If you have employment opportunities, you need to put that in to your release plan. That is something that, you can do. If you're going to be self-employed, this is too early to put that into your release plan. But at the same token, you can also know that you've reviewed the First Step Act, which we're going to go through, and you understand, for example, if you have a temper, that there is anger management classes, and so that you could say that you've reviewed multiple classes that are available through the First Step Back, and you know that you'll be able to benefit from a lot of those programs, and so that you have a lot of work to do on yourself, because you have to prove it to yourself, your family, and the community before you re-enter society. And so these are very important things that the judge needs to know. Next, we're going to get into, you're going to go into the judges maybe is going to go ahead and sentence you at that particular time. We'll see. We're going to address that at the end of the YouTube, but your very first meeting with your unit team now is when you get into the First Step Back. So we're going to take a picture, take a look at that. The First Step Back, if you haven't looked at that, the First Step Back addresses 13 needs, areas ranging from anger and hostility, antisocial behavior, family parenting, education, finance, and poverty. All these are just general broad categories, but all of these are individual programs. And so, for example, how do we get through this here? If you're a female and you have a substance abuse problem, let's say you qualify for the RDAP or drug program, and you also you have post-traumatic stress disorder. And so it used to be that you would go into a prison for the post-traumatic stress disorder to be cared for there, and then you would have to transfer into somewhere else for the drug program. Well, open this up, and I'm not sure when it started, but as we open up the FIT program, there's now 2 programs in the country where you can get everything at one particular location, at Danbury Low and Hazleton Low. These are 500 hours. All right, so just kind of do the math as far as 500-hour programs goes. It's very long. There's 365. I'm not sure how that works into credits, 1 hour. I don't know if that's 500 hours is 500 credits. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But this is this one particular example. We can go into, other programs. There's a drug program. Let's see if there's another one. I mentioned skills program for autism. So we'll open this as an example. So the skills program is available at Coleman Medium, Danbury Low for autism. Again, 500-hour program. And so as you get close, before you get to the pre-sentence interview, both you and your attorney are going to know how long a sentence you're looking at. And now your attorney needs to know where you're going to be sentenced, especially if you're going to be looking at, if you're a sexual offender, because once you get into these categories, you want to go, your attorney may want to try and get you into one of these 2 programs where it's a little safer for you from the rest of the inmate population, or to a camp, because otherwise it's not as safe. Back to the original. Next, we're here to so when you go in to meet with your unit team, the First Step Back, but you get there, you're going to want to take the assessment questions. Well, wouldn't it be good to be able to know these assessment questions before you actually have the meeting with your unit team or case manager. And the unit team and case managers have a tremendous amount of discretion to where you sleep, where you eat, the jobs you take, that you get, to the programming you take, and to how quickly you can transition to halfway house and home. So you don't want to alienate these individuals. If you are a banker and they tell you, or they suggest a program that is for you to take regarding how to balance a checkbook, take the program, say thank you. And don't roll your eyes, because the goal of the program, yeah, it's to learn something, but a bigger goal is to get the credit so that you can begin to show them incremental improvement and a reduction in your criminogenic need. All right. And there's only one way to do that. And that's not two ways. The one way is not by arguing, being grateful to take it. The second way is that you're going to have to document for your own record, in my estimation. And this is why. Because when we first get driver's insurance and health insurance and homeowners insurance, we get all of that because we hope we don't need to use it. But once you get in a car accident or you break your leg, you're happy you have insurance. When you go ahead and they suggest that you take a first step back programming course or class, my recommendation is, and you don't have to do it, but unless you can think of a better way, I'm just following other individuals' lead. In other words, recommendations. What I've come to believe is the better idea is that you go to Amazon and I'll try and put something online at Amazon that you can buy cheaply that you can use as a logbook. But you can find inexpensive $6, $7, $8 a paperback, softback journal, notebook to purchase that has lines in it for you to do your journaling or writing, to make notes in that, but they have to have wording already on the inside somewhere. Otherwise, the Bureau of Prisons will not let it through the front door. It has to have some sort of writing in there. And then every time you take a class, you should go ahead and every day date it, make an entry by day, date, time of who taught the class, what you thought of the teacher, and how well they did. What you learned, the name of the course, what you learned that day. And then at the end of that particular class, that you're grateful for the case manager who instructed you to take the class, because this is your proof that you took the class every time. Because if somebody has a short memory that they forgot to tell you to take it, or they don't remember they told you to take it, or the teacher that was there forgot to mark you present, you have a record, day, date, and time. And so it's important that, to me, that you do this. While I was in the BOP, they didn't have first step back, but I will tell you that through my practice, and to this day, out of every email that I send for business purposes and for whatever purpose I do, I copy myself on everything. I have a copy of everything I send out to anybody, and that includes just everything. And so I've made it a habit. So this may have to become a habit for you, but after you develop a habit, it'll be second nature. And so while you're not in the habit of doing this, it will become a habit. And I can't overly emphasize. And the second thing I will say is, while you're doing this, I hope you like to read, because you have a lot of time. And my recommendation, because you're trying to impress the case manager that you are reducing your criminogenic needs. And the only way I can think to do this is by showing incremental improvements, is through friends and family, develop a reading list that you can have sent 2 books at a time from Amazon, paperbacks of nonfiction books. It can be autobiographies. It can be history, science, philosophy, life skills, marketing, anything you want. But for you to do either reports or notes or however you want to do it by the author, the book, and takeaways from each book by chapter or however you wish of things that you believe you can use for either in life or in practice while you're in prison or after you leave. But this then can be used with, as you show your case manager, that on your own, you're trying to reduce your criminogenic need. Just think about it. Do you really think other individuals in prison are going to do this? Probably not. And so if you want to appear as like a star child to your case manager, I can't think of a better thing to do. And so these 2 things you need to build a habit of, and I would start the books being sent into you 2 days before you get there, every 2 weeks, and after a month, you'll be reading like it'll be a habit. Instead of watching TV, sure, exercise, get out and do what you do, but don't be late for classes because they will, and don't miss any classes because they will kick you out of the class. If you have a medical visit, go to the medical visit. And if they're late, wait because they'll show up. And if you leave because you think that they're not coming, don't leave. Stay there because they're going to mark you absent. They don't have to show, but you have to show. Next, at the same meeting with your unit team and case manager, they're going to bring up the financial responsibility program. If you have, which is this, I should be doing this at the same time. If you have a financial penalty with your court case, even if the judge says that you can wait until you get out of prison, don't. The Department of Justice is on, and Congress wants you to pay. The Department of Justice wants to come in and take 75% of all the money you have in your commissary account. The Bureau of Prisons does not want that to happen because they depend on profits from the commissary account to pay their staff and to use for other spending or other expenses. Therefore, I don't recommend keeping thousands of dollars in the account. It's not in a commissary account, not very smart. 2, if you're going to be getting, no matter from where, $1,000 or more a month, offer a couple $100 a month to your counselor for your financial responsibility program. If you have a financial penalty and you're getting a couple $100 a month, maybe you can offer $100 a quarter. If you think you can offer $75 a month, okay, I don't know. But if you're getting, see what you can do. From here, we're going to go to pattern score. Well, let me show you what the questions are. I passed that by mistake. So here are the questions that you need to understand for first step back questions that you should know ahead of time. There are 2 surveys. They both are about the same. This is the inmate interview form. I guess, I don't know where you fill that out. You may fill that out day 1 on your own paper and pencil, or you may fill this out on the computer. I have no idea. But there are questions. What's your understanding of the first step back? There's needs assessment process. How are needs identified for the first step back? Did you take the inmate survey on TrueLinks? If yes, do you have any feedback? So these are questions. I didn't leave you any space here to answer the questions. These are just, I put them together so you can think about them in order to answer them for yourselves. The second, this is the interview form that the staff will do with you. So be prepared to answer the questions. And these you should be able to weave into your narrative. Very important, because to the case manager and to the probation officer and the judge, this will show that you're prepared, because you're going to say that you saw this, you were looking online, you saw the First Step Act, and you wanted to learn more. And then from the interview form for the staff interview, you saw that they wanted, what are your thoughts on program statement 540001 on the needs assessment? Well, we've gone through the needs assessment, but you can print this up. I'll open this for you. And this needs assessment program statement, once you print it up online, you can then print this up and you can take it, you can mail it to yourself 2 days, a day or two before you arrive in prison. Then the second one, this one, 52.0, this is the program statement, but this is for those who are medium or high risk, mostly. And I say that because when we open it up and take a look at it, productive activities, da, 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 da. So this is for, I don't see where it says it's for, this is for race programs. I don't see where it doesn't say where it says for its people for medium and high, but it is, because it's given them privileges for extra phone privileges, video conferencing, an extra 510 minutes, 30 minutes a day, social visitation, transfer to an institution closer to home, bed availability at a transfer facility. So these are things that are usually for those that are at a medium or high facility. So this you can print up and then go ahead at your leisure and answer these questions and include them in your reentry release kind of form, if you will, so that you appear more prepared as you enter that. Your pattern score, once you begin to go into that and understand it, this is more of a fixed score. In other words, you can't do more to change this other than stay out of trouble or get older. So we're going to look at the male one, and you'll see what I'm in momentarily. Current age over 60, 0 points. At the Walsh, that's childhood problem. If you have, children, childhood crime, 0. Violent pattern, if you have none, 0. Criminal history points. Criminal history, your United States Sentencing Commission guidelines is a 2-axis comparison to determine how many months you're going to be in prison. So it's criminal history versus offense level. Criminal history is 0 to 1, 2 to 3 points, etc. And this is how it goes as far as how many points you have. And it's history of escapes, history of violence. A lot of this may be previous, if you're, currently incarcerated, education score, etc. Work programs, PR, financial responsibility program. If you refused, it's going to be a point. You want to have low points on all this. Okay. So now we've done the pattern score. So now we're going to go into what you're doing. You're gathering now your complete medical history. So if you have no matter your history, but more important, if it's a large medical history, you want all of your physician contact information, names, address, phone number, fax number, email, website. You want copies of all your surgery reports, pathology reports, copies of all blood tests going back a couple of years. You want all medical records from the office and from any other resource I haven't mentioned. You want all copies of all diagnostic tests. That would include CT, MRI, X-rays, ultrasounds, EKG, EEG, PET scans. You want to get these all on CDs as well as flash drives if they do that for you. And you might as well get 2 copies of everything, because chances are, even though physicians now have everything on portals, if in fact you're not portal friendly, you may want to get a copy for your records. You want to get copies of prescriptions of everything. And I mean everything. That would include medical devices, CPAPs, BiPAPs, eyeglasses, orthotics, prosthetics. If you have diabetic shoes, get a new pair real fast. Wear a pair in and carry a pair with you. If you have eyeglasses, bring in another pair, as long as they're not made of metal. Wheelchairs, canes, crutches. If you have medications, we're going to go into that in a minute. But you want to have copies of these medications placed on all of the devices that you're bringing with you. Medications, they're divided, I call them 3 tiers, and they're going to be they're going to be on formulary, which means they're available. And if they're available, just make sure that you've gone through the formulary that's available online. And next, understand that a single generic medication from a brand name manufacturer, once it goes generic, a single drug can have multiple generic manufacturer companies. And so that drug can finally be made available, the same medication, in different shapes, sizes, and colors. So just know that in advance. Or your medication can be what's called non-formulary or non-available. And those drugs, you may have to wait. They're available, but the Department of Prisons strongly discourages BOP doctors and pharmacists from making them available for your use. And so that means you may have to wait anywhere for their authorization may take 6 to 18 months or longer. So if this is a medication that you're on, it's important that your physician know both lists that are available through the BOP, and then decide if there is a substitution medication that is available that you can take. Then he or she should make that switch for you now. So make sure that drug is okay. Next, drugs that are non-formulary or formulary, they have certain limitations of use. Some are 14 days, some are shorter, some are longer. You need to check that out with the physician. If the drug non-formulary is not appropriate for you, the physician needs to put that in writing as to why it's not appropriate. And then that makes that drug not available. And that will come into the last category of being not available. And therefore, the physician should put that in writing as to why it's not available, why each drug that is either non-formulary is not appropriate for you, the drugs that are available through the BOP, why each one by one, is not available, and if they have tried to use the drug on you, what were why they did not work. And then last, the physician should be coached to try and come to the hearing, because judges want to talk to the doctors. They don't want to read everything. They want to ask questions. So now I'm going to show, I have all the drugs that are available. This is the this is, let me move it over here. So this red non-formulary sheet here is red. These are all the drugs that are non-formulary. Right now, there is 325 that are non-formulary. And they have different drugs. There's pending surgery, 30 days or less for use. There are some that are only non-formulary. They have certain criteria. Some are, non-formulary, but just for narcolepsy. We're going to go to the formulary list. This formulary list has 3,624 drugs. I mean, maybe you can knock it down by, I don't know, 30 drugs because it doesn't start till line 11. But this is all the drugs that they have. And every one of them here. But your attorney, I'm sure, can go through the drugs one at a time. But these are the drugs that are available. And your doctors can go through the on-formulary list and determine whatever they have and then see what's available for you. And if there's nothing, they're strongly encouraged to make to be a witness for you at the sentencing hearing, because the Bureau of Prisons does not consider a judge's order once you get into prison. And so the attorney needs to know that what the Bureau of Prisons has stated is that should the judge have an order, the judge needs to talk to or make the order to the attorney for the Bureau of Prisons regarding medication, regarding anything. Next, you need to get copies of your diplomas, highest education level achieved, plus any certifications of any kind, trades, occupation, it doesn't matter. If you have special certifications for computers of any kind, I would leave them out. Any sort of diplomas or certifications or anything from the military service, I would include that. Highest rank, branch, discharge of any kind. Letters of recommendation should be letters of character, not recommendations. There should be letters of character written by people who know that know that you have a criminal charge and are still willing to write a letter of character in your behalf, as well as if there is an employer who says that they're willing to hire you, should a position be available when you're released, and the business still be viable, but that they would like to hire you back because of your character and your skills. That is a great letter to have. Continuing, at the same time, your lawyer's been busy too. You got a lot of work to do. I mean, don't let the narrative, your personal narrative letter, fool you. I mean, that narrative from the Department of Justice through your indictment has been read by your colleagues, the judge, the probation officer, your attorney, the prosecutor, friends and family. Your narrative is your only way to begin to humanize yourself in front of the judge. So that's a big thing. Your attorney now is reaching out to the probation officer. And so these individuals, we try and be very kind to them because they're overworked, underpaid, and have no time. And they don't mean to be aloof when they're meeting with you, but they have a lot of people that they have to see and not a lot of time to do it. And so the goal is just to try and, get to make their lives easier. And so when your attorney links up with the probation officer, they identify who it is, introduce themselves. They want to learn what forms they need, what are the dates that they need the forms, by what date do they need everything in. They want to know what date is best for the probation officer to do the interview. And lastly, they want to know what's the final dictation deadline date for the probation officer to complete their pre-sentence report. And that's important. That gives a deadline for your legal team give them the defense strategy. In other words, where they have to have all of their work done with you for the pre-sentence interview, and where they can fine-tune the relief from the relief from the guidelines. In other words, to have a more specific idea as to the guideline range regarding a placement request with the reason as to why. Usually you need that reason. It's either going to be medical, it'll be regarding programming, maybe within 500 miles of a legal residence, or should another reason arise. It's important for the counsel to learn as much as they can from the probation officer as to whether the probation officer has spoken to the prosecutor. That's important, because if they haven't, then that's a very good thing, because that means that the probation officer has not been biased yet against you. And it gives your attorney time to begin to make your case to the probation officer before they have spoken with the prosecutor. Because if they've already spoken with them, then that means they've already been influenced, but just against you. Further, they can learn a little bit about the likes and dislikes of the judge and the nuances, what the judge likes, how they like to proceed, and what they don't like, and how the judge likes to run their courtroom. Further, let's see, what have I left out here? Pretty much, we are at this point in time, I would say at the end of March 2023. I don't want to say COVID is gone, because it's not. For seasonal flu, 50 to 75,000 people a year, I believe. That's where the fatality is a year. And they're saying that for COVID, it could be 4 to 5 times as much. I'm not sure, but what I am confident about is that if in fact you are a post-COVID long hauler, which means your symptoms has you bedbound. In other words, you're going to sleep, be nauseous, get up, eat, go to the bathroom, sleep, lie down, watch TV. That's it. There's no prison, jail. There's really not much you can do. And if you can walk around, get dressed, walk outside, come back, I don't think there's a prison in the country that can care for you. There are hospital systems that are just beginning to be able to create treatment plans, and none of them involve making sure that you stand up for a standing count, that you're up at 7 in the morning, that you're, at a certain time you're here, another time you're there. That doesn't exist. And as we continue, lastly, I hope, let me see here, that one more point that I wanted to is that if in fact you've gone through, you've done everything right, you're at the sentencing hearing, and the judge has listened to your personal narrative, He's listened to your reentry. Please listen to your reentry plan, and possibly he's departed downward from the narrative, from your guidelines. This is where your attorney is going to suggest that we'd like to make a placement request, with the reason being that your client would like to go to this specific, would like to go to a prison that has this particular program based on autism or the drug program. And the judge will say, okay. Then your attorney can follow that up with, and thank you, Your Honor. And now your attorney should only make one placement request. And so in that case, Your Honor, could we recommend one prison, and that would be this prison. And this is why it has this program and it's close to home. And the judge would say, okay, and we'll write down that into the order. And then your attorney would say, and could you also add that if the BOP is not able to make that placement request, could they at least let you know in writing as to why not? And the judge, you may agree. And lastly, and we'll use this as an example, we're going to use Alderson. Just as an example, is that your attorney then could hand this over as an example to the court. Is that, let me hand it, if I could turn this in, Your Honor, is that this is that prison. And as you see, it has the Resolve program, which also has the drug program in it. It's not written here because this is an older one, but it's checked off. Plus it has all these other programs in it at the same time. And you hand that over, and it has all these other programs that are in it. And I can pull this down to show that it has these other programs. And you can see that foundation program, but it had all these other, there's a drug program, and it's got the others, and then there's a Resolve, but it has a plethora of other programs that are all in there. And so that this is, this is the program that this is what that your attorney would then hand to the court. And the judge would leaf through it. And probably, I think, he's never been handed this, like anything like this before. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this YouTube about prison placement, but also you as the defendant or client participating with your attorney as you prepare for your pre-sentence interview. Thank you for listening and watching, and have a good day.